Cool. I'm going to switch
All
this
right.
around.
We are good. So first of all, thank you everyone for being here, and thanks Dan for joining. This is exciting. 2 times in 1 week.
It's awesome, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity, man. I'm excited.
All right. So for everybody that's joining us, I'll do a quick intro. If you don't know me, I'm Chris Ronzio, founder and CEO of Trainual. We started doing these impromptu webinars a few weeks ago. And I think if there's a silver lining in any of this and everything that's going on right now, it's that so many industry leaders and amazing entrepreneurs are just putting in the time to helping people and giving back. And it's really cool to see. So today we're joined by an entrepreneur, business coach, Dan Martell. He's the founder of a company called Clarity FM, among others, which is an amazing service to connect you with experts. And most recently, he's the founder of SaaS Academy, which I'm a member of, which helps SaaS companies, software companies, reach the next level, attract and convert their leads and expand their customer base. Really cool. So Dan, thank you again for being here.
Chris, my pleasure, man. I'm excited. I'm committed to giving you guys 110%. So whatever you need, let's do it.
I never expect less from you. Dan, I don't know if you know this, but our podcast, Process Makes Perfect, the YouTube version of it, the video version of it, your episode had more views than anyone. So this will probably end up on season 2 as well.
Cool. Didn't know that, man. I love it. Let's try to beat it.
All right, cool. So I know we had prepped this topic, the ultimate tech stack for distributed teams, but I want to definitely touch on that and add one more thing. And I wanted to start by you introducing this concept of chocolate broccoli. And then I'm going to frame this up for everybody, but I've heard you talk about this so many times. So can you tell everyone what chocolate broccoli is?
Yeah. So chocolate broccoli is it's really used, I think, in marketing. I think too often as, business owners and entrepreneurs, we want our customers to love the thing that we've created, but for many of them, that's not necessarily what they're looking for. So if you think of the broccoli being what they need and the chocolate being what they want, we always have to meet the customer at where they're at in their own life, right? So if somebody, they need a nutrition plan, but they're just trying to look to lose 5 pounds before they go on vacation, trying to sell them a nutrition plan may not be the chocolate they need, which is, I need to lose 5 pounds before I go on vacation. I've got all-inclusive, a cruise, et cetera. So that to me has always been, for every product out there, what is the chocolate that we use to track somebody in? And then once they're in, we've got the opportunity and the permission to kind of give them a little bit more broccoli, and we wrap up the broccoli and the chocolate.
Perfect. I love it. And I've heard you describe it so many times, and now I'm saying it to everybody, and they're like, what the heck is Chris obsessed with broccoli for? But I think it's such a great metaphor. So for this chat that we're having, I was looking through the notes yesterday, and I know we put out there the ultimate tech stack for distributed teams, and we planned this out weeks ago. And so I want to touch on all these tools, but then once we get past the tools, I think what people really need right now is just the mindset shift of how do we get out of where we are? How do you look forward? And I've heard you talk on Instagram and everywhere else about this idea of being a wartime CEO, and like how this current environment gets you excited for opportunity and puts you on the offensive. And I think people need that right now. So if the tech stack is what the chocolate, the mindset stuff is probably the broccoli. So are you cool if you cover both of those?
Yeah, I think that's the right way to do it. So which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the tech stack. So, for everyone that came, Dan runs this group, SaaS Academy. And if there's anyone out there that is more plugged in to the SaaS community, I don't know who they are, because Dan is friends with every software that you've ever used, their founder, their founding team. He's texting them all day. So this guy is just a monster networker, I guess. But, you don't usually recommend tools, which I think is interesting. So most of your coaching is like not prescribing the tool, it's prescribing the framework or the way to go about something. And so we're kind of peeling that back a little. You don't have to be biased. You can give tons and tons of examples, but I thought it'd be cool to sort of go department by department and just talk about the different areas of people's business and things that they might not know about, different tools or platforms that are out there that can help in a remote distributed world?
For sure. There's five core areas, I think, of a business that we need tooling for to really build a strong distributed remote team. To give context, I've been building software companies in a distributed fashion for over 20 years. Back in the day, where we're using conference calls to really sync up, just because of the nature of the work I always did. I always sold. So in my company Spheric, which was my third company, the first two were complete failures. I was always on the road selling to the enterprise. So I had to build the company in a distributed fashion, right? And then over the years, what I've seen is tools come along, and we'll talk about the specific ones that have really allowed us to continue that trend. And what I've seen today, in my personal opinion, is, if done right, can be even more powerful than an in-person. I think what happens is in-person can definitely support certain collaborative and creative endeavors, but for the most part, there's also a lot of wasted organizational knowledge that just, kind of leaks through the water cooler talk, that's never captured, that's never shared, that's never made aware to the rest of the organization. So
I want to stop you before you get into them. I'm curious if everybody that's watching, if you could put in the chat, were you remote or distributed before all of this happened, or have you been thrown into this? So just a simple answer, before or brand new. I'm curious just what the makeup of people in here is. So let me give you a minute to do that, because I think that'll be interesting to frame this. So let's pull that up. Before, brand new, before, so even split. Both, mostly new, before. Okay, so kind of 50-50 before. And it's interesting because I think, we advertise this broadly, but a lot of the people tuning in might be Trainual customers. And I think Trainual's user-based customers do have kind of distributed or remote teams. That's why they've got the product. But it's interesting to see I think this is a good representation. It's like half of companies had work from home policies or remote employees working somewhere else, but a lot of companies didn't. And a lot of companies have just been thrown into this, and it's brand new. So that's good context. Why don't you kick it off, Dan?
Yeah, so the 5 stacks. We'll start at kind of the bottom, which is the more horizontal, that's applicable to every company. And one of the filters that I use for anything that I've ever built personally as a software tool or how I operate companies is I look for asynchronous collaboration, meaning that synchronous versus asynchronous synchronous is this: you and I talking, having a conversation. Asynchronous means that it can happen disconnected. So it supports multiple time zones, different people working different schedules, etc. So a little bit more powerful. So for meetings, I'm a big fan of Zoom. It's what we're using right now to broadcast this. Back in the day, we used a bunch of different tools, from helpouts to Skype video, Skype audio, 1-800 conference calls. I mean, literally, and this is why, Chris, I don't talk about the tooling as much, because honestly, it shifts around every 16 months. Every 2 months or 2 years to 3 years, there's dramatic shifts, right? So Zoom, really took over a space that was dominated by Hangouts, Skype, and whatever Microsoft had, or Microsoft, I guess, bought Skype, and is just dominating space. So for the meeting infrastructure, I'm going to say Zoom. So that's the bottom layer. The layer above that is systems, right? So companies need ways to document their processes so that they can create what's called repeatable, scalable growth. And that, my favorite tool is your product. I mean, Trainual is the solution point. Like, when I think of iPhone, why iPhone is so powerful is it allowed you to build apps for very specific solutions, right? These individual tools for a very specific, we have apps like Kazam that lets you know what song's playing if you just put the app up to an audio stream, right? So when I think of systems and building SOPs, standard operating procedures, checklists, training, Trainual is definitely the tool for that, right? So I used to say Google Docs back in the day.
I won't argue with you.
Yeah, well, it's just the truth. And I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. So in regards to systems, which is kind of the layer up, that's 4. Trainual. 3 is projects. And, the projects one can be debated, much like email marketing tools can be debated. But for me, I really like Trello. And I would say second to that is probably Asana. I think Trello is really good for companies that are sub 2 million in revenue. It's fluid and it's flexible enough to really solve all types of workflow and process, et cetera. But it is once you get to scale and you need a little bit more timeline management and Gantt charts and project management type stuff, then Asana makes a good fit there. So that's 3. Layer above that is chat, right? The water cooler conversations, the quick questions amongst team members in a distributed format. That's going to go to Slack. Again, Slack is fairly new in the grand scheme of things. Prior to that, we had HipChat, Campfire. I mean, I'm going old school when I say IRC. So most people don't remember, like, all of this is based off of internet relay chat. So that's your chat infrastructure. And then one that I'm a big fan of is voice, right? I think that a lot of conversations require an audio component to it. And for that, I go to Voxer. And there's many other tools out there. The reasons I like Voxer is I like the disconnected aspect of it, being able to send a message to an individual while I'm on a plane, while I don't have the internet. I use it for collaborating with my assistant. I use it for groups. So every one of my organizations in my company has a group chat, so I can just drop notes and ideas. And it's just, for me anyways, my writing ability is very short and lacks sometimes empathy. Like, I'm very, I don't know, Chris, if you suffer from this, but I'm very like specific, and it loses kind of the voice or the tone to it. So voice for me is an incredible tool to be able to share with in a very distributed format asynchronously to my whole team. So those are the 5 levels of a stack: the meetings, the systems, the projects, the chat, and the voice.
So the asynchronicity, if that's a word, is kind of the thread through all of that, I think. And
100%.
It's interesting because I've never really called it that or thought about that. But I remember the first time I had a developer that I was working with, and they were in the Czech Republic. And the idea that I could describe things during the day and be working during the day, and then they could pick up where I left off and work through the night, I felt like it instantly cut time in half. Like, while I was sleeping, stuff was happening. And I think with these kind of asynchronous tools, that happens at a different in a different way in different time zones with different people around their meetings and their other commitments. So really cool to point that out. If we go back through these, deeply, I think there's each of these web out, the meeting tools you've got, Zoom is great for the stuff that we're doing. And, we do all our stand-ups and our daily huddles and team meetings and one-on-ones. This is facilitating that. I think there's other tools like Slack has a video component. You can call each other in video. It's strange because we use Slack to type, but then we don't use it for video. We use Zoom. So
but isn't that fascinating? That's the whole use case that I was mentioning earlier about these single purpose tools, right? Yeah. Is even with other products having certain features, we really want to build we want these tools like a Trainual that is specific for that one thing. Even if we add other features, it's hard for us to kind of connect, that chocolate and broccoli together, where it's better to have them as individual tools. But they do have it. I mean, that's the thing is, maybe Trello has some kind of content communication platform that I'm not even aware that can be built in, right? I'm a big fan of the specific tool for what it does and kind of allow that.
Yeah. So, when you think about meetings, are there other things that facilitate great meetings? Like, I know there's agenda tools for meetings. I think Adrian, he was on recently, and he was talking about a company called Fellow. Do you know them? They're like
yeah. So Adrian's a friend of mine, another Canadian. I'm a Canadian entrepreneur. I'll say A and a boot. So I mean, look, there's so many different tools out there for different, so if you just think of, I consider, so these are the, on the mechanical side, these are the different parts, right? But what makes the engine work is meetings and rhythms and routines, right? So when we talk about what does a good stand-up meeting look like? Well, they have inputs and outputs, and then they have an agenda. So Fellow and other tools like Office Vibes or 15.5 or there's so many now in this space of kind of like culture and one-on-ones and kind of performance reviews. They just provide structure around things that we inherently did, but it allows bad managers to be good managers. So there's so many different tools that I use. We have like 35 different SaaS products that we pay for on a monthly basis, right? From all the email stack to sales stack to customer success stack. But I just think it's fascinating because all these tools follow these same tenets of single purpose, specific outcomes, and they allow the workflow to be built in it to take somebody from average to excellent.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting if we just went through every single tool that we use to keep our businesses afloat. That would probably take a long time. And I don't know where exactly, I've even got a list of everything that we use, but
we have a spreadsheet because like anytime we get our credit card compromised, we have to update so we literally have a spreadsheet to make that process easier. So it's at least visibly, I can see it at a glance. It's crazy.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I mean, as we go through them, so we talked about meetings, systems and SOPs, of course, we've got covered. Chat is pretty easy. Projects is kind of like the systems to do the work, I think, is where you get into a really wide spectrum of services because, Trello or Asana or Basecamp or Teamwork or any of those tools that are just kind of like, the checklists and the projects and the milestones and something like that is crucial. But then there's also all these tools that are industry specific, like certain companies that are listening here are going to have point of sale tools that manage all their inventory and their merchandise or some companies might have like field service management tools, which if you've got people that you're dispatching, like deliveries for restaurants right now, there's whole tools that support the infrastructure of that business. How about like on the finance side, expense tracking or any of that? Do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah, 100%. So the way I think about it is you're right. There's kind of in the what's called ERP space, enterprise resource planning, there's these horizontal industry specific solutions, right? At an enterprise level, there's the NetSuites of the world and the SAPs, but then every industry has their own flavor of that. So like, literally every industry from HVAC to field services, which I guess would be HVAC, et cetera, they all have their vertical. In regards to things like finance, and I'm totally speaking to my clients because I coach floatapp.com, so they provide a cash flow management tool. They sit on top of Xero. Expensify is the tool that we use for expense remittance, et cetera. There's Spotlight that sits on top of Xero. So as long as you're doing your accounting in the cloud, what I've loved is just the new world of integrations, right? So it's kind of like the glue becomes Zapier. So Zapier or Zapier, whichever way you want to pronounce it, that's the glue that connects most of these tools to each other. But if you're using a cloud-based solution for whatever problem in your business, then you can use a third-party integration to augment it where maybe the product doesn't want to add that specific functionality. And that's a great example for Xero. It has an ecosystem of hundreds of products that sit on top of it to provide insights and automation and workflow management on top of your accounting.
Yeah. So if anyone listening doesn't use Zapier or Zapier, one thing I always recommend is just go to their website and look through all the tools that plug into there, because you can click on the categories. And if you're looking for something in your business to solve a certain functional problem, just click on one of those categories and you'll see the coolest tools that plug into this whole ecosystem. And so that's where I discover a lot of the applications that we use, is just clicking around there and finding who integrates with what. And I see a new logo I've never seen before, and I'm like, that sounds interesting. Let me sign up for a trial. Okay. So let's keep going here. I don't know if anybody that's listening has specific questions. Is there a department, a function, a problem you're trying to solve that maybe we can make a specific recommendation on? Because I think we've covered sort of broadly the different parts of a business that you'd want to make sure you've got cloud-based resources. I'll talk a little bit more in the kind of HR space, but if you've got any questions or any areas, please put them into the chat here and we'll address those. But I guess when it comes to people, Dan, you mentioned Office Vibe is a great tool. I think they even have a free version. We used to use that where we collected surveys from our people to understand how they're doing, how their manager's doing, how likely they'd be to recommend the company. I think that is so important right now, especially if you've got teams that aren't used to working from home, like to have a pulse on your team. Is that the tool you use?
Yeah, so that Office Vibes. So we use 15.5 because I feel like It's more in line with what I wanted from a tool set. Like, this is the cool part. If you're literally looking, why don't we teach them how to fish, Chris? Because like, if you want to find the best tool for solving a problem, search the problem and then add G2 afterwards, which is a review site for online SaaS products. And there's other review sites out there, but G2 Crowd typically skews towards business to business tooling. And if you find one tool, you can find related, and you can kind of compare them. So I mean, everything from like, the other day, I was evaluating OKR platforms for objectives and key results, which is kind of a management framework. And there's literally 13 different tools that, for the most part, do very similar things. Things like employee, culture, what's called ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score. Those are the things like an Office Vibes of 15.5. I believe Fellow has it built in, and many others. It really depends on kind of what are some of the key things that you're looking to accomplish. But yeah, those are the products that I like, and I just go to G2, which is the site you got up there.
Yeah, so I'm sharing my screen for anybody that can see it, but g2.com, great resource. I agree with Dan. If you're looking for something, just search a category, start clicking around here. You'll see that like 1 million reviews or something. You've probably heard of it in the past. So G2 is a great resource. Another one is Capterra. I'll put this in here, capterra.com. Very similar. It's another software review site. They categorize things and they compare things. So great places to find software. And the last one I'm going to put up here is Product Hunt. And
that's for the early adopters in the crowd.
Yeah. So exactly what I was going to say. If you like trying things before they go big, or if you like the newest version of something that is still in beta and it's like it came out today, this is a place where you can follow those things and see all these tools. But I also use this for search. I'll search a category like a video chat tool, and you'll see all these cool tools that pop up. And many of them are these startups that are trying to compete with big companies that might be free or very cheap and might be just as good as the thing that you're looking for. So it's a cool recommendation. So check some of those sites out. All right, let's see. We've got a question here from Lindsay. 2-year-old startup IT infrastructure buried in receipt tracking, and I hate it. What would you recommend for automating logging of receipts for a business that has 50 to 75 employees?
Yeah, so Expensify is your best tool for that. And it's cool because it has a mobile app. You can literally just, if you have a paper receipt, I never keep paper receipts. I just take a photo of it. It'll automatically scan it, grab the tax component out of it, grab the name, the information, the date, categorize it. And then if you have multiple employees, it'll essentially put it into management workflow for approval. So that way you can delegate certain people's approval of their expenses to individuals, and then it'll roll up for final approval and posting into your books.
Awesome. And I'll chime in with a couple other options. There's one called Shoeboxed that I've heard is pretty cool. And you can actually send a envelope of all your paper receipts to them and they'll log that in. And then another one is Abacus, which I forget how to spell it. So you'll just have to Google that a few times. But Abacus, I think, is what we use. And that syncs to all the employee credit cards and pulls things up. So you've got a log of things to just sign off on, again, mobile or otherwise. Any other questions before we move on for the specific tool stuff? This is your time. If you've got any industry or department or something that is just a pain for your business, Dan and I could at least point you in the right direction. So we'll let you type in anything else. And in the meantime, Dan, why don't we start to pivot? So from the software tools that, I think a lot of people, if they were just thrown into this 4 weeks ago, they probably have been Googling and exploring and asking for recommendations. So hopefully people have got most of the kinks worked out. But where do we go from here? Like we're all kind of trapped in our houses right now, and we're thinking about how the world's going to change looking ahead. So for your clients, your coaching clients you work with like me, how are you managing mindset right now?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it, Chris, is mindset is something we have to deal with every day, right? And I think that it's a mistake for people to think that, whatever I'm feeling today, if it's good or bad, that's enough, or I don't have to do something tomorrow. So one thing you have to decide, it's a daily thing. Then you got to ask yourself, well, how do you feed that, right? Like anything, our energy goes where our focus is. And for me, it's about kind of like building a routine, rituals, and habits to kind of get me in the right mind space, because the mindset's going to set off all the decisions we make and the activities we do for the rest of the day. So if we get that wrong, then we can literally miss the opportunities that are right in front of us. So what I've done, I mean, and you've seen it in the Facebook group, that I personally decided that on a daily basis, I'm going live into the group to share some perspective, because I really think that's all I can do as a coach is just provide people a different lens to view the world, right? Some of the ones that have resonated with a lot of people is, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, right? The idea of this is an opportunity to either decide that it's going to hold us back or it's going to be an opportunity to grow. Just for this morning, for example, I was saying, yes, it feels like a forced imposed, isolation or, shelter in place, but we can also decide, going out of this or coming out of this, we're going to be in better shape, right? We're going to be better educated. We're going to read 10 pages of a book per day. We're going to improve a skill. We're going to improve our relationship with our partners, right? We're going to educate our kids better. And those are all decisions we can make. So what's fascinating for me, again, perspective, is a long time ago when I was growing up as a teenager, I used to hate the rain, right? Because it meant that I couldn't go outside, play in the woods, play with my friends. And then I got into gardening, which sounds ridiculous, right? But then all of a sudden, because I was gardening, rain was a welcome thing, right? If it was raining for a day and it had rained a while, I know in California, people, they celebrate when there's rain because they can have droughts. So I just really think it's about perspective. So for example, we can decide that we're going to take this time to grow and set goals for ourselves while we're in isolation. And if anything, the longer we have to practice that skill, that opportunity for growth, the better it is. So all of a sudden now it's not a decision made against us. It's a decision we made for ourselves, right? There's never been a better time for you to get your health in check because you've got nothing pulling at your routine and your calendar, right? Like Chris, I don't know about you, but I used to be on the plane every week and now not. So
totally.
I now have 100% freedom to set up my schedule and cadence to train.
So I'm glad you're talking about this because it's one of the first things I did, the 2 days into being at home and then realizing, okay, next week we're still going to be at home. That was what I did, is sat down and wrote out some goals for what I could accomplish in a month. And then that turned into like a quarter when I realized how long this was going to be. And so I made a goal to do 100 rides on my Peloton, which is in my house. And I had probably used it 3 times in the last 6 months. And I thought, let me, I have no excuse right now. Let me just hop on that thing and do it. So are there like other fitness or personal apps or things that you're using that people can, really get into right now?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to that stuff. So, I mean, I track everything. I wear an Oura ring. This is a digital ring. I wear, iWatch. I have a Garmin Connect watch. I'm, as you know, I'm training for triathlon. So all the apps from Strava to Training Peaks, et cetera. I would say for a lot of people, if they're not into that mentality, it's really just deciding to sweat every day. I mean, I just want to simplify it for people. You wake up today and you have an opportunity to turn a square on a calendar, red or green. Okay. If you worked out and you sweat, you got a green square. And if you don't, it's red. And if you look at your week, ideally, you want to get at least 5 to 6 green and very few red. And if you look at a month, then you want that calendar to be green. So that's the opportunity that everybody's got, is just to simplify it to, did I move today? Because I'll tell you, from a mental point of view and the mindset, your body has to move for us to really feel inspired to do things. Because, for most people, they're not keeping the commitments to themselves. And that has a chain reaction to how they show up in their work and how they show up for their partners in their lives and their kids, honestly. And imagine, like, monkey see, monkey do. There's never been a better time for you to set an example for your kids because they're watching you 24/7 right now.
Yeah. Yeah, such a good point. And it doesn't need to be complicated equipment and fitness trackers and all this stuff. Like somebody texted me, actually, remember when you did the push-up challenge where it was like add a push-up every day? So
yep.
Dan, for everybody, Dan did this thing where it was like, start with however many push-ups you can do, and
max
next day
add
one, and then add one, and you're surprised at how quickly you grow in your capacity.
The goal is 100 push-ups in a row.
Yeah, and which is crazy. If you tried to sit down today and do 100 push-ups, I bet most of the people on here, I bet money that no one on here could do that.
No, I mean, there would be a rare reason why somebody could pull off 100. They must be like just getting out of Navy SEALs training or something. But yeah.
So you know what the next creative take on that? I just saw someone texted me 2 days ago and said, ask Siri for a random number between 1 and 100. And then you've got to do that many push-ups today, not continuously, but just you have to do that many today. And so it puts a little bit of spontaneity into your day or whatever it is, where some days you're like, oh, 99, are you kidding me? And some days it's like, too sweet, let me take the day off. But I think you can have some fun with it. And this is a perfect time to do that. On the intellectual side, you mentioned books, there's online courses, there's this time right now, you can really have a tangible impact. If you've got a stack of 3 books on your desk and you can actually read 20 pages a day because you're at home and you can do it, like that's an amazing thing that you can check off your list. Are there any other resources that you'd point people to, Dan, like that education?
Yeah. Well, so 5-minute journal, I think, is probably one of the most powerful practices that you can implement. It says 5-minute journal, but it's really 2.5 minutes in the morning, 2.5 minutes at night. And it just asks you questions about 3 things you're grateful for. What would make today great? And then daily affirmations, that's in the morning. And then 3 amazing things that happened today and what could you have done to make it better? And this is based on science, on research of the most productive people in the world, just setting the intentions for the day. So 5-minute journal, I get, because I give them away at every one of our events. Like, to me, it's my go-to. Tim Ferriss promotes it quite heavily. And then the other thing is I'm actually on a mission to read a book a day. But that obviously sounds a little crazy and daunting for a lot of people because most books will take you between 6 to 8 hours to read. What I do is I use Blinkist. So if you haven't heard of Blinkist, they take a book, literally 6 to 8 hours of reading, and they distill it into the essence of the book. And it takes me about 30 minutes to read a blink, they call it. So pretty much for the next 30 days and probably until we're out of isolation, I've made a commitment to read 1 book. But here's the key, because reading isn't enough. We have to take action on it, is read the book and then take at least 3 pieces of action from it, right? So that's kind of how do I internalize the information is I read the book. An action could be as simple as highlighting a passage and then sharing it on my social media. It could be grabbing a screenshot and adding it on Slack and assigning something to somebody because I think is really inspiring, right? But it's really just taking, the decision that every day, 10 pages probably take you 10 to 15 minutes, 30 minutes to read, technically understand the grasp of the whole book. Obviously, you don't get all the storylines in a full book, which I'm a big fan of reading as well. I still read full books, but that's a great tool. So Blinkist is one I would recommend.
Another trick I've heard for people that want to read every day, but might not have the discipline or the time or whatever to read 20 pages or read 2 chapters or whatever, a whole book like you are, read for the aha. Like if you start and you open up a page and you read 3 pages and 3 pages in, you got some cool idea. A lot of times those things can get lost because you keep reading because your goal was to read 20 pages or a couple chapters. But if you read until you hit that aha, then you close the book and feel good about going to post that note or share it with somebody or write it down. I think that's another great way to look at this so that it really just truncates your commitment.
Yeah, I'm a fan of, no, I don't even finish most books. As soon as I feel like I got what I needed, I'm good. And I'll move on to something. I'm also a fan of reading the books you need to read for now, not just because somebody recommends it and they say it's a good read, right? So if somebody wants book recommendations, just post the topic you want to learn in the comments. And I will, because I've read over 1,000 books, I will tell you the very specific book you probably need to read to solve or understand that problem better. But yeah, I'm a big fan of just-in-time learning versus just in case.
That's a cool recommendation. All right. I would say everyone that's listening, take advantage of that because that is like a concierge shopper for your Amazon cart. So put in your chat, anything you want to learn about, we'll look for those. So Dan, you've got a team, like a lot of people listening, and your team is distributed all at home. How do you keep your team motivated? Because, you're a very ambitious type of person. You're very disciplined. You wake up every day and light yourself on fire to get things done. And how do you, get some of that to rub off on the team? What are you doing to keep them engaged?
Yeah, well, I think it's the daily stuff, right? So every morning I send a voice message to the whole team, letting them know my priorities and kind of what I'm excited about. I use Slack to kind of share the vision and the mission and the values. Anytime I'm on a team meeting, we always start with celebrating wins. And I always try to praise the work they're doing and remind them kind of the customer impact that they're having from the work. I think it's very easy to be very task driven without connecting the effort to the outcome and the impact that we're all striving for. So it's really, I think the biggest thing, if you talk to people that work with me, and I'm also involved in 40 plus other companies as a, advisor, and we work together. So it's like, it's very voice driven. It's very audio. It's disconnected. I'm just always conscious of, not only helping, but also challenging, right? Stretching, like saying, hey, that was amazing. Congratulations. Have you thought of this? And just really trying to push things further. I just feel like people are capable of so much more than they give themselves credit for, including me. And that's why I like to put myself around people that are going to push and challenge my thinking, my ideas. And that's just what I do for other people. Now, some people can't survive in an environment like that. So I think it all starts with the recruiting. So I've got a very high filter for the type of people that I allow on my teams. But if you make the team, then I just try to make every interaction connect with the outcomes that we're going for, to remind them, because it can be easy to get lost in the monotony of the task.
Yeah, for sure. So keep vision, mission forefront, remind everybody
daily.
That.
Daily. When you think you're a broken record, you're still not doing it enough.
Good reminder. So one thing that I've done in the past, and I'm not doing it right now, but you just reminded me to do it, is I would pick like an accountability buddy. And when I had some kind of goal that I was trying to get to, we would text each other every morning and just say like, hey, how's this going? Anything I can do to help? And just that knowing that you're going to get that text every morning was really powerful. So I just wrote this down and like circled it in my notes, but I think that's something we can do company wide, where everybody pairs up randomly for a week. You get a buddy, you text each other, check in on each other, make sure you're okay. And then the next week it switches and it helps you interact with other people. So brand new idea, but we're going to try that. So I'll report back on how that went.
I love it.
So let's talk more about the opportunity that could come out of this too, because it does take a certain mindset to be open to opportunities and not to just be down on the current environment. This morning, I jumped into my pool, which is freezing right now. And as I was sitting there in the pool, like trying to cool off from my workout, I was looking at the plants in my yard, and I thought, what's a great idea is like all the plants are dying in everybody's offices right now. Like someone should spin up a product that lets you buy office plants and get them delivered. So in 2 months, when everybody wants to buy that, there is a leader for that. And I think that like I was musing about that. Like I told my wife as I'm walking upstairs, and I'm not going to make the office plant store. So if someone else wants to do that, go for it. But like, how do you get yourself into that mindset where you're thinking about things in that way? Because I know I probably take it for granted. So how do we get someone into that mindset?
Yeah, I actually did a video on this. I think it's probably 4 weeks ago on my YouTube channel, because people that are new to the entrepreneurial game don't understand how people like you and I can just literally come up with new business ideas in the same, like daily, if not, multiple times per day. And if anything, we got to be careful to not throw hand grenades in our business, right? Like, have a new idea and derail the whole company. I think that's something that as you grow past kind of a dozen team members, you kind of have to mature into and realize like, hey, now I have to build a system for making decisions and executing, because it's easy for us to come up with ideas. So my guidance in that video, there was 4 strategies, but I'll share one of them with you, and that's the frustrations list. I think most people don't give them permission to come up with things that frustrate them. So what I would recommend everybody do is walk around your house tomorrow with a notepad. And anytime you see anything that even feels like it's a little bit of friction or isn't optimized or it could be done better, I want you to write it down with no commitment to do anything about it or not. Just make a list, right? So that could be as simple as, why isn't there a hook outside of the shower so that I can dry my towel? Or why isn't there a towel rack down next to the sauna? Or why... for most people's houses, it's like, why is our drawer for the utensils so far away from where the plates are? Or like, it's just little things in regards to organization, or maybe it's the way your garage is coordinated or set up, or maybe why don't we have a door ringer that has a camera on it so that when Amazon people come, we don't have to answer the door. We can talk to them. Like, again, these are all things that you can solve. Most people have never decided to create this friction, this frustration list. And I think they just got to build that muscle, right? They got to build that muscle of problem solution. Entrepreneurs, and this is why I'm excited about the world today, where a lot of people are pessimistic and feeling really down. You know, my video this morning in the group was, you know, we don't have to buy in. We don't have to opt into this downward economy. We can decide to thrive in these moments. And I think that's true. And the reason why is because entrepreneurs are really good at one thing: solving problems. There has never been more problems in the world than at this moment right now. So if that statement is true, there's never been more opportunities like you just talked about, as of one example, of things that need to be solved. I had a friend recently launch a new business for disinfecting using fog. Okay. Now she saw the idea in Asia, worked hard to grab the technology, licensing it for North America, build the whole brand, and they launched literally 2 weeks later because they saw the opportunity. So again, some people are going to see every reason why this is the worst economy ever. And other people are going to go, oh my gosh, there's so many problems around me that I have the opportunity to participate in, that you can actually come out of this better than you went into it. And that's the whole argument I've been making from the beginning.
I just thought of another free idea while you were talking. So I'm going to share this one too. Ever since I've been home, my webcam's sitting at the top of my screen right here. And I find myself look at your face, look at the camera, look at your face, look at the camera. If there's like a little suction thing to stick my webcam in the middle of my monitor, I would buy that all day. And you could probably make them for 30 cents and ship them worldwide. So there's another one. But I think what you said is so spot on. Like, you have to walk around your house or travel to Asia or whatever it is. Those are just like experiencing the world. You've got to get out and experience, and then you've got to collect the frustrations and be aware of the things, build your list, be aware of the frustrations. And like you said, your friend 2 weeks into it licensed the technology and acted on the idea. And I think that's where a lot of things fall off. Like, I'm never going to act on the webcam idea or whatever because my plate's full. But somebody that's looking for opportunity, or their current business has been really affected, they have the capacity to act on great ideas. And so if they can build the first two parts, the experience and collect frustrations, then there's so much abundant opportunity that could come out of this.
A lot of problems right now and a lot of people in pain, and they need those solutions.
Great. Okay. There's a couple book requests that have come into the chat. So why don't we go through these again? If anybody has questions about anything we talked about, software recommendations, book recommendations, you can drive the rest of this conversation. But let's go to Ryan, who says, we're a digital ad agency. I'd look recommendation on copywriting, or more specifically, copywriting for digital ads. Got any book or resource recommendations?
Yeah, it's the one-page marketing plan. I want to say hi to Noah. Noah, can you go put your head up higher? Noah decided to sneak in here. Noah's 6 years old. And he likes showing people his muscles. You want to show him your muscles? Show him. He literally walks around and just slaps his arm all the time, just like, what's up?
Wow. I mean, for a 6-year-old, he is chiseled.
He is. He thought he was on the skinny side, but he's growing into himself. Anyways, yeah, so one-page marketing plan is probably one of the most succinct books on marketing. If you want something specific to digital marketing, in the information marketing, you really can't go wrong with Russell Brunson's book, Expert Secrets. I think that he does a really good job dissecting and simplifying a lot of different components and funnels. And those would be my two recommendations.
I would have said the same thing with Russell Brunson's books. I think he's got like 4 of them now, and usually they're free plus shipping or something. But so much of that Expert Secrets book is about how to position a pain point and a problem and
how to find the market, right? He talks about like just understanding where to go find the people that have those pains. And here's the thing that you just reminded me of, Chris, it's so critical right now, is if people aren't willing, because they're like, oh, I don't have the money. Look, I coach Russell and his team, okay? I don't need to buy his book. I bought his book. I bought his course. I buy everything. Why? Because I want to invest in my knowledge. I want to continue to, you know what I mean, Chris? Like, there's a reason why you decided to get a coach, because you wanted to invest in yourself, and you know that there's more opportunity. And to me, that's the mindset part, that we can give them the tactics. Hey, go get this book. But even more important for everybody watching, believe that you're worth investing in. because that's what it's going to take for you to kind of become the person who can have opportunities, who will be exposed to a different way of thinking, because the lens that you're viewing the world right now, your worldview, doesn't have the right filter on. The reading will unlock that filter, and you will start to see things around you in a way that most people don't.
Yeah, great advice. So Ryan, if you're listening here, the recommendations Dan had are great. I think you can also get even more specific, because like, what platform are you doing copywriting for? There's books that are very specific to that platform. Or if you're trying to make a funnel or a community that you're trying to sell, or a SaaS product you're trying to sell, there's copywriting tips that are baked into these books that are more broad in terms of the topic, where it's like, how to build a community or a platform or a subscription business. And so you might start a little broader with whatever your ad agency. And it's like, are you advertising your ad agency, or are you advertising your clients? And there's probably other books that will spin out of that. Lindsay, let's see. Lindsay said, I've been a stay-at-home homeschool mom for 15 years. Awesome. Thank you. Went back to work 18 months ago, and my job is morphing into marketing. What's the best marketing 101 book I should read, since I have no marketing experience or educational degree?
Well, I'm going to give you some new ones. Definitely the two I just recommended. I'm still a huge fan of Purple Cow. Like Seth Godin, he wrote, like books that have withstood the test of time are really, really powerful. I think Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, is foundational to really understand. I know, Chris, you guys do such a great job at Trainual around the why, around the company and the product and the customer space. But I'm excited for you, Lindsay. I think that, if I go back and people ask me, like, if you could go back and give yourself advice, I was a software programmer for 9 years before I really decided to become a practitioner on the marketing side, because I realized that it didn't matter how great my product was if I couldn't communicate that value, which is where the chocolate broccoli came from, that I was not going to be successful as an entrepreneur. And then I've really made it my life's mission to become really good at, marketing, persuasion, positioning, and the sales conversion on the back end. Because I think that those are really the skills that allow you to do any business, right? Like I'm an investor in a ton of companies that are not software, and they thrive because business fundamentals are business fundamentals. And persuading and offers they're universal across the board. So I'm excited for you, Lindsay.
So I just thought it'd be fun to grab the books that are within arm's length of me and just show what I've ordered, what's on my docket. I don't know if you've got any over there, Dan, but I'm just going to grab some. So my library's upstairs. I got this one from you.
There we go. Todd Herman.
Last event.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's a good one for mindset. Anybody's dealing with imposter syndrome, read that book.
So Nathan was also at your last event, but How to Be a Capitalist Without Any Capital by Nathan Locke.
And that's a great one if you want to get really hustler, like tactical. I call it the modern day 4-hour work week. It's actually got a lot of scripts and tips in it. It was a really well-written book.
Definitely. The Money Tree by Chris Guillebeau. I don't know if you know Chris.
Chris is great. Yeah. He's written a lot of good books. Yeah.
High Growth Handbook. This one is
Eli Gill. That's next to my desk. That's the Bible for scaling SaaS.
Let's see. I've got Range. Have you read this one?
I haven't. David Epstein. No.
Let's see. I've got. These are good. Tribes by Seth Godin.
So good. Yeah, I got to meet him last October. There we go. Another book from my event. Did you get that from the Toronto event, Adrian's?
I actually had it before then because I know Cameron, but I was really excited when I saw Adrian in person, and I think he signed the other copy I had.
Yeah, that book right now for PR, especially for those that are getting a lot of exposure, will help you amplify that in a big way.
Then we've got, let's see.
I've actually got a list if people want
Crossing the Chasm. It's a good one.
That's a fundamental. Yeah.
So anyway, those are the books that are sitting on my desk. So if you're interested, but I'm sure Dan, you could post many others. And
I'm gonna give everybody a link to a PDF where it's kind of a neat story. My cousin, he was 18 starting a business, and his dad was an entrepreneur, but his dad was, like those old school entrepreneurs that never read and kind of grumpy all the time, only had like 2 or 3 books. That was his dad. Okay. So he pulls me aside when I'm at their house, and he asked me for advice because he's like, I want to build a business, but I don't want to build it the way my dad's built his because I see how unhappy he is. And it really hit me, because this is probably 10 years ago. And then he goes, what books should I read to learn entrepreneurship? And I mean, Chris, that's a big question, right? Like, what books should you read out of all the books to learn how to build companies? And I sat down on the flight home the next day, and I put together my top list. I think there's about 75 books and based on different categories. So I'm just going to grab the PDF.
While you're doing that, I wanna go back to something you said earlier. Just because we're recommending something doesn't mean it's the right book for you to read right now. And so, take all these recommendations, and like half the books that I just showed you, I haven't read yet. They're just ones that people recommended. And I every time I'm ready for a new book, I scan through the list of everything I've got on my desk and say, this one is relevant. This is the one I'm going to read right now. All right.
I posted it in the chat. You're going to have to copy it and put it in a browser because of the way the new chat doesn't link things up. It kind of bugs me.
So it's a Dropbox link. So we'll take this, and for anyone that's listening, if this ends up on the podcast, we will shorten it, put it in the show notes. So look out for that. Let's see. We've got one more question here. Johan, I follow you both on Instagram. See that you have several success habits. What's the most decisive success habit for you? And why these habits specifically? By the way, thanks for all the inspiration and energy. Awesome. Thanks, Johan. So Dan, I guess the question is, if there's one habit, something you do every day that you think drives your progress the most, what would you point to?
Soon as alarm goes off, 5 a.m. every day, including weekends, my feet hit the ground, I start off by just thanking my creator for having the opportunity to breathe and create that day every morning. First thing, boom, feet hit the ground, trigger. That sets off everything. From that point on, I feel like I've won the day.
Awesome. I love that. I think for me, you can kind of see behind me, I've got this little whiteboard. And so I've got my annual goals, my monthly goals, my weekly goals. And every day I come down and I stare at that and I figure out what are the 3 things I'm going to work on today, so that I've got a very focused intent for the day. And then I go make coffee and play with the kids and work out and do all the other stuff in the morning. And I come back with that in mind. So that's from me. But this has been really cool. I know we jumped around a lot, books, software applications, mindset, all this sort of stuff. But, I think people right now could use the inspiration and support, and that's what we're here for. So I really appreciate you coming on, Dan, and spending the last hour with us.
My pleasure, Chris. And normally I don't wear a jacket, but it is Formal Fridays. That's another thing that we decided to do while we were in lockdown, is every Friday the whole team dresses up just to provide. It's not even like normal because I usually wear a t-shirt, right? So it's like, we're going another level up. So when we get on our Zoom session as a team, we get to celebrate a little bit. So I think people just have to have more fun with it. We can decide it's a frustrating thing, or we can decide it's an opportunity to grow. And I choose growth. And I would invite everybody to join in that mentality as well.
All right. So instead of casual Fridays, everybody do Formal Fridays.
It's the opposite.
Very cool. All right, Dan, thanks again. Thanks for being here. Everybody, I appreciate you logging in, participating in the conversation. If this ends up on Process Makes Perfect, definitely download the podcast and you'll see tons of other great content, or check out our YouTube channel and all of the stuff that we put out at trainual.com. Thanks for being a part of this, and we'll see you next time.